Hello and welcome to another one of our monthly Aucademy lives. We are live on the first Wednesday of every month at the moment. I'm David Gray Hammond and I have the honour of hosting this today. So today we have Kat, who is going to be talking about primer on the experience of being autistic. I know this promises to be a really good one, especially I think for people who might be newer to the autistic community. I'm going to start with a brief physical description. So I'm David Gray Hammond. I'm a mid-30s white Mediterranean male with a shaved head, a beard, lip piercing, and an ear tunnel. I have thick-rimmed, greyish, purpley glasses. I'm sat next to the bookcase that everyone is convinced is going to fall on me. And I'm in a very blue room with a map of Middle Earth behind me, because you've got to have Middle Earth. Kat, would you mind introducing yourself and giving a brief physical description?
I am light-skinned. I have kind of a square jaw. I am told I have cheekbones, which would make sense because that's my heritage. I also have glasses, and they are wire-rimmed. I'm in a light blue room, and I have a bookshelf with some kids' books on it. I can see over there. And then a lot of little shelves with little things from my travels around the world or from people who really meant a lot to me or mean a lot to me. So, and a white curtain. Wait, see, I'm backwards.
So, Kat, what are your dedicated interests?
Okay, so one of my biggest dedicated interests is the experience of being autistic. And that's because I'm only 4 years into my journey and it's still fresh and new. There's so much to learn. I have been kind of getting into learning about manipulation tactics and cultish things. That kind of goes along with it. I realize now that I've maybe been manipulated many times in my life. So that's good stuff to know. I'm learning a lot about that right now too.
It's funny you mentioned cults. I literally did a podcast episode last night about neurodivergent people and cults.
No way.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, I want to hear that.
Yeah. You can find it on Spotify and YouTube and Facebook. It's everywhere, really.
It's everywhere. Oh yeah, that's a big topic right now. But I want to hear it.
Yeah, it was a really good episode. But you mentioned you're 4 years into your journey. So can you tell us a little bit about when you discovered you were autistic?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out exactly what my story was. So it was around 2019. I had been going to see a therapist for a while, and she handed me an article about ADHD and asked me to read that and see if it resonated. And so I read that, and I thought, okay, yeah, there's something going on here. So I kind of got in through the ADHD door. It just from there, I realized I need to learn more about this. I found a mom group because I'm a mom of 2 wonderfully neurodivergent kids. And in this mom group, they talked about the different ways of being neurodivergent. And I heard Christy Forbes talk. And while Christy Forbes was talking, I was sitting there saying, oh, this is good stuff. It was just, wow, wait a second. All of this is really resonating even more than the others, I might be autistic. So that is a huge rabbit hole. I found Kieran Rose's Inside of Autism course. And so a lot of this, what I'll be talking about today, probably comes from going through that course many times. Every time I go through it, I learn something more. So anyway, I kind of started with Christy Forbes, hearing her talk, learning more about it from Kieran. And then from Kieran, I learned about Aucademy. And of course, then I had to listen to every single podcast episode from Aucademy. Just had my headphones on as I'm working around the house. So yeah, for about 4 years.
Yeah, it always amuses me when autistic people like myself have a special interest in autism, because I think it's almost like our equivalent of breaking the fourth wall. Like,
Yeah.
like, I find it amusing that like so many autistic people, their special interest is autism. Like,
I know, right? That's actually one of the slides in the presentation that I'm gonna have, because seriously, what's more autistic than your your dedicated interest being autism? I mean, I don't know who said that first. I want to be able to credit that to somebody, but it's so true.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're here for, though, isn't it? We're going to talk about autistic experience. And as you've mentioned, you do have a presentation that we're going to use to kind of guide the conversation.
Got to keep me on track because of ADHD.
It's all right. I'm also ADHD. I need keeping on track as well. So we'll use the presentation to keep us both on track.
Okay. Hey, there it is. Okay, so yes, the experience of being autistic. And I want to start by saying I'm really honored to be here, to be asked. When I got the email asking me to be here, I had a moment where I just kind of freaked out, and then I thought, no, I want to do this. I think I'm ready to do this. Kat B is not my full name. And that is because I'm still kind of recovering from my mom's reaction to me, sadly, when I told her I'm autistic. And it was a very difficult, not even a conversation, but made it feel very unsafe to talk about being autistic. And it's still painful for me to think about that. Because if I would have stopped there and not gone through this journey, I just think about, I would be in a very different place. Because learning about the experience of being autistic from autistic people in autistic communities has changed my life dramatically, and so much for the better. So I wanted to share this part of my journey on Aucademy, and also find out more, because we are in community, find out more about what other autistics experience is of being autistic too. So thank you for being here, and thank you for inviting me.
We're honored to be part of your journey.
Thank you, David. So the information I'm going to share and kind of lead the conversation about is my personal experience. It's my unique lived experience. And I know every person has their own experience. And it's going to be a very bird's eye view, because this is 4 years of intense study, if you will. But I do have a couple of pages of resources, and David, you are actually on there. Yeah, right. So if you want to dive deeper, if this spurs you on to learn more about different topics, and I do welcome and encourage people jumping into chat with thoughts and reactions. I am actually not able to see the chat from this from where I am here, but we have someone who will be watching the chat and letting us know what people are saying. I've talked about this in a couple of other groups, and there's always someone who finds some of the things that we talk about triggering. And so I just want to let you know, make sure that if you at any point feel yourself getting heightened by what we're talking about, please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. Leave, step away, grab a glass of water, something like that. And then afterward, plan to do something to process what you've heard. I know I will probably be either pulling weeds in my garden or sorting Lego or something like that. Calling my best friend and screaming. I don't know. But a good place to start is a very brief history of autism and what autism isn't, because I think we still have, the stereotypes from TV and such of what we think autism is, but it's really not. Big part of it is sensory systems and monotropism. So if you're like, we'll talk about that. The spectrum, and then getting into autistic identity and culture and autistic communication. And here's what we were talking about earlier. There's nothing more autistic than your dedicated interest being autism.
I agree. It's like the quintessential autistic thing, isn't it? Like,
I wish I knew who said that first. Yeah. There's so much freaking cover. And I respect people who prefer to say that they have autism, but I prefer to say I am autistic. I like, someone said something, it's not like a piece of luggage that I can just set down and move on. And I definitely don't think it's a medical disorder. And sometimes I capitalize autism and sometimes I don't. I know that bothers some people, so I apologize ahead of time. Well, it just is. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So what is autism? Historically, it's based on the work of a few guys, and I highly recommend Kieran Rose's new book, Autistic Masking, and they go into it there. So they do a much better job than I could at this point. But basically, it's based largely on young white males and a few females under duress. And I was thinking about the neurodiversity movement. I think it's a reaction to that realization that we've gone these decades with this understanding of autism that really is not helpful. And autistic people are starting to speak out using mouth words or writing in an attempt to communicate what it really means to be autistic, in the hopes that we can stop, right? So the abuse that's happening to autistic people who,
I think people sometimes, I think because of the name, might be misled, but the neurodiversity movement at its core is a civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's where I am in my understanding too. So when we think about stereotypes of autism, ADHD is right up there, right? We talk about how the overlap between ADHD and being autistic, there's a huge overlap there, but it's not, at its core, quite possibly it's not ADHD. What do you think too?
I think there is a big overlap with autism and ADHD, and I've seen all kinds of estimates in research as to the overlap, but I don't know. I know there was some researchers, I think out of the University of Derby, who tried to position autism and ADHD as two different presentations of the same neurocognitive style, but I've not really seen anything build on that idea since then. So I can't really be sure just how accurate their opinions or ideas were at the time.
Yeah. And then in a lot of movies, you see people with dyspraxia, which I had to look up, make sure I got the definition right. It's a developmental coordination disorder that makes it difficult to perform motor skills, and it causes issues with coordination. So if you being uncoordinated is not autism, right? Mm-hmm. And apraxia it causes difficulty with motor planning to perform purposeful tasks like walking with a smooth gait or making a sandwich in a certain order, things like that. So again, if you have problems with the coordination and things, that's not autism either. A learning disability, we hear so much about high functioning, low functioning, things like that. And autism has nothing to do with intelligence or learning abilities and speed of learning and things like that, right? Bipolar disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, OCD, even demand avoidance. Demand avoidance might be a part of autism, and we can maybe talk a little bit about why that might be. I think it has something to do with monotropism, which we'll get to. But eating disorders or even food preferences, a lot of us like our same foods, but that some autistic people really like novelty. So that you can't say it has anything to do with eating, or ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Again, all these disorders that I'm starting to
yeah, you do hear the word disorder a lot when you're looking into these things, don't you?
Right. I know. Alexithymia. Not sure. It's yeah. That has to do maybe with sensory system. Although I think. Oh, and we were having this conversation. Was it in Aucademy and the social? Are you born with alexithymia or is it trauma induced? And we're like, both. I mean, it could be both, right? Alexithymia was it not being able to really pinpoint how you're feeling all the time? Maybe, that's, I don't know. That's not like a great definition. Situational mutism, going mute, not being able to speak. I can suffer from situational mutism when I'm being talked over, when I'm not being listened to, when I really want to say something, and I'm just dismissed. I'm not going to be able to talk. Echolalia, all these terms, I don't know if people have heard these. Echolalia, repeating back either in your mind or with your mouth, saying things that you've heard. We could have a whole thing on echolalia.
Yeah.
But it's not autism. None of these things. Sensory processing disorder, synesthesia, executive dysfunction, time blindness, which is time agnosia. What a face blindness. Epilepsy, a brain injury, a vaccine injury. None of these things are autism.
If I might add one onto your list.
Please. Yes.
Schizophrenia. I've been talking a lot about autism, burnout, and psychosis, and some people have misconflated the fact that I am schizophrenic as well as autistic. They've misconflated psychosis as being a part of autism. I'm like, no. Psychotic disorders are not a part of autism. Like, you can experience them when you're autistic, but they are not autism.
Right. And I'm interested too to think about, okay, so what part of being autistic might trigger a psychotic episode? Like maybe, what is the link? Maybe there is a link there, but you're right, it's not autism itself.
Yeah. I suspect it's probably heavily tied to monotropism, if there's a solid link there.
Okay, so when we get to that part, yes, because we can definitely bring that in. That it's the break of my monotropic focus that can cause some episodes. Yeah. So this is where maybe we can spend some time chatting. How autistic people take in information. And so, I've heard some people talk about the hyper part, that we have better hearing or more sensitive senses, but it can also be hypo. And here's my kid saying, "Oh, yes, you can do something."
But you said that
I'm on a live stream. Ooh. And I was like, "Oh, goodbye." But you can also be hyposensitive. So let's talk about this. We're talking about hearing. And this, I know. So when I first started talking with Dr. Chloe Farahar, this was probably 2 years ago, the one thing that she had me do was go through each of my senses and start to notice what I liked and what I didn't like, or where I was sensitive and maybe not so much. So I did that then. It's been kind of a running list. And I started with touch because I thought that was easier, but of course I didn't put that on the list, in this order. But I wonder how many people, like, I like to play this game with my kids where you have like a bag or something, and you put some items in there, and you can put your hand in there and you can feel around and see if you can identify the items just by touching them. I mean, we love doing this stuff. So apparently that's something that I'm really good at. Like, I can just feel my way around. I can picture what I'm feeling just by touching it. And I don't know if that's something everybody can do or if that has anything to do with being autistic, but
interestingly, I found that people who have that reduced interoception, so that reduced sense of what's going on internally, I found in my work that a lot of those people then have very good tactile senses, which might maybe explain why you get autistic people who don't notice that they've broken their ankle but will fall apart if they get a paper cut.
That's a good point. So interoception, for people who may not be familiar with that, it's just being able to understand kind of what's going on internally, right? Like the feeling of hunger, or the feeling like, oh, I need to go to the restroom. That's a good place where a lot of people are hyposensitive, where you have no idea when they go to the restroom or when they're hungry. I think, yeah.
It's also tied to
alexithymia, right? Yes. Oh, what else? So, touch. Things that I like being pushed against, and that's a little bit of proprioception too, maybe. But big tight hugs from my kids, and not like the light tickly touch. And examples, taking hot showers in the winter, cool showers. The feeling of water can be very extrasensory. Cotton clothes. Okay, yeah. I've got this same shirt in like 15 different colors. I know how it feels. I like how it feels. No, it doesn't have tags, but I think that's like overused. Once you find the clothes that you're comfortable in, like, go ahead and buy 10 sets of them if you can.
I have 7 of these. 7.
Exactly. I mean, okay, so yeah. you go into the closet, you don't have to think about what you're doing either. You just pull out the shirt, pull out the pants. You know they're gonna match. You know they're gonna feel good. Oh, I don't know. Fuzzy socks are awesome in the wintertime. It's so hot here that, yeah, no. Fuzzy socks would not be good. Squishmallow, or, okay, we call them squish. What are they called? Yeah, squishmallows. Sometimes we call them squishimals here. They're squishmallows, right? All those things. So that was one of the first things to learn about being autistic, was really, what do I like? What do I not like? So I can avoid the things I don't like, and I can spend more time on the things that I do like. What are some examples of sight? Okay, I like bright natural light. You can see, like, I have a curtain on my window, but it still lets in some light. I can see better. It makes me feel better. I like blues and natural hues of colors. And so, David, I can tell you like blue, but yours is a darker room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And you can't really, hang on. Alexa, star projector on.
Okay.
Here we go. Look, I like to light up my darker room with.
Wow, that is so cool.
And I've got sort of LEDs.
Yep.
So yeah, that's that's part of the reason why I have a darker room, is because I get more contrast on the colors.
Right. And see, and that's what my son is like that too, where he would, yeah, with the LEDs and the stars being projected. Yeah, so I get that too. We're total opposites, even though we're in the, same family. Oh, I even thought about, I like having some empty space to rest my eyes on. So the wall behind the computer screen is blank. It's just a blank blue wall. Rainbow colors, things from my travels, things like that stuff calm me. And sights that bother me, I wrote down violets, but it's true. Like, it's almost like a hyper empathy thing. So if I see even slapstick humor, I feel that.
Yeah.
Viscerally, like, I will say ouch. And for some reason, contrast, like if back when I was a runner, I'm not a runner anymore, but back when I was a runner, I would be in a sunny area and then go into dappled shade, and that I just can't handle that. I don't know, something visually, but who knows. So, I mean, everything to go through and really think about. Do you have anything that you wanted to? I'm not seeing anything in chat.
Well, actually, I was just thinking. You mentioned when you see like injury, like in slapstick comedy or something, it makes you go ouch. I recently learned about this type of synesthesia called mirror touch synesthesia, which is literally what that is. It's you see someone get touched or injured and you feel it yourself. And I found that really interesting because I'd never heard of that form of synesthesia before. But it set me down a whole rabbit hole when I found out about it.
Yes. Oh, and you just reminded me too. I came across visual snow syndrome. Again, it's a syndrome, but still, that I remember as a kid, I would lie on the ground and look up at the blue sky, and there would just be all these dancing lights. It's like snow, like static maybe on a TV screen or something. Yeah. And I'd forgotten about that. And when I think about it, I can still see it. I see it all the time, but it's just something I've learned to kind of ignore. But I was reading about it, and it said one of the co-occurring, it's with autism. And I'm like, what? You don't see that every day, where you come across this weird thing, and they actually wrote in there, that it's may possibly common to autistic people. It's just the things that we come up with or that come across now.
I wonder what that exact. I'm gonna have to look this up now, because when I look at a blue sky, I can see lights that pulse with my pulse. So as my heart beats, I can see little lights dancing across the sky, and it's clearly blood pumping through the vessels, but it doesn't look like vessels to me, because all I actually see is like points of light that move in time with my pulse.
See, I think that's cool. All right. Does it have a name for? Yeah, is there a name for that?
I spend a long time just staring at the sky just to look at it.
Right. And so that makes you think of, when I think about little kids, the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old who's lying on the ground and staring up at the sky for an hour or two at a time, and the adults around them are freaking out. Well, maybe they're looking at how cool the lights are pulsing with their eyes, or I see all these cool, like, sparkly, flashy light, and I did.
Yeah.
I was able to. I grew up on a farm. I had plenty of time.
I see that there's a question pinned here about what mirror touch synesthesia is. So synesthesia, in case you don't know, is it's sort of like where your senses get muddled. So you might hear colors, or I don't know, smell numbers. Basically the different sensory inputs kind of all swap around and kind of do their own thing. And mirror touch synesthesia, from what I've read, is experimentally they've shown it as they can touch someone else's hand and you will feel the touch on your hand even though no one's touching it. But from what I've read, it can expand to as far as if you see someone get kicked in the shins, you will feel a pain as you witness that happen. So it's kind of like, for me, it almost seems like hyper empathy taken to an extreme.
It's like a jolt.
Yeah.
I feel it. It's not like the actual physical pain, but it's more like a jolt of something for me. But yeah, it makes watching, like right now I'm watching The Simpsons. Like we started with episode 1 and we're watching all of them, and there's a lot of that, Homer's always getting hurt, and I'm always, I'm like, we just keep going. Yeah, and I can't watch the whole, the mouse and the fighting, itchy and scratchy. Just can't. No. Anyway, we have another comment.
Amanda Sutton can see little lights too, but they don't know if it fits with their pulse.
Yeah.
I mean, I only found out because I realized there was a rhythm to it, so I measured my pulse whilst watching it. That's how I found out. But yeah, I find it really interesting because, like I said, it's clearly that I can see the vessels on the back of my eyes. But for me, it's like a real visual stim. Like it's the sort of thing I can just watch for a really long time and get lost in it.
Yeah, mine's definitely not to my pulse because they are just going over. Yeah, they're just very, very fast. You can't see my hands like that. Oh man. So lots of things to think about with sight. And okay, so auditory sound. We haven't talked about that. And this is something like I can listen to 80s songs. I was a teen in the 80s. I know how old I am. And when I hear certain songs, it's like I am there. I am that age again. I'm reading the book that I was reading when that song kept coming on the radio because they played the same songs over and over again. And so sounds can be very, I just if there's such a thing as a norm, I just feel like certain sounds and touch and things like trigger a response that is greater than most other people. So for me,
I find that sound is often misunderstood as well, because people will be like, well, you don't like that loud noise, but you like this loud music. And I'm like, yeah, but the loud music was a choice, and it gives me control over my senses because I know what sound is coming.
Right. And some sounds are just, so apparently fingernails on a chalkboard, which we don't even have chalkboards anymore. That's an irritating sound to most people, but there are a lot of maybe innocuous sounds for most people that are to that extent annoying and irritating to other people.
Clock's ticking, like most people can't even hear it, but if
Right.
I can hear the tick tick, it's like it's driving me to insanity.
Yes, that is so true. We have all digital clocks for that reason. I can't stand to hear the ticking of the clock. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good one. I'm looking back at these things that I wrote 2 years ago, right? Oh, a lot of songs they're so cathartic. I will just burst into tears. To say that autistic people lack empathy is just mind blowing. I don't understand, because I think there's so much more empathy there that even a song can just I'm a puddle of tears. Oh man. Oh yeah, I did. I wrote about ticking clocks in here. That's funny. Oh yeah, we could talk about monotropic. See, we have to get to monotropic soon, because someone talking to me when I'm in flow that's not a sound that I enjoy. What else have we not covered yet? Smells. I like fruity smells. It's like in winter when it finally cools off and I can turn the heater on for the first time, the smell of the burning dust. Do you have that?
Yeah, it's I haven't decided how I feel about that smell yet, but the one that really gets me and actually makes me feel a bit ill is the smell of hot metal. So
I don't know that one. See, I'm not sensitive to that one.
Yeah, so even if a radiator's clean, I can smell it heating up, and it kind of makes me feel a bit ill.
Yeah. So you would probably dread wintertime a little bit.
Yeah, I don't do well with heat anyway. So, but we've had another question from Amanda Sutton. Do you think we experience music in a much more intense way than most people?
I do. The thing is, the point, it just depends. I don't know if you can say all autistic people, or even most, experience music in a more intense way than most people, but or can you? I don't know.
I would probably argue that you can't probably say that we all experience it in an intense way, but we do all experience it differently.
In a different way.
And even from each other differently, I would probably say, but I have to say I relate a lot to what you said about you can listen to a song and it's like you're back in that period of your life. And for me, like, I have really strong ties between like past events and certain songs, and if I listen to them, it just takes me right back.
Right. And so I know it has a name that I can't think of right now too, but to hold an object from that time can bring people back viscerally to that. Even that's why I can't really get rid of the kids' toys so much, because their memories are so tied to that object that there can be kind of a fear that I'm not going to be able to remember that unless I have that object. And so we have photos too, like I can remember details of events if I have just one photo of it. to trigger that.
I used to drive my mother up the wall because I would keep things like empty crisp packets because they had sentimental value. And like, so there were things that people would be like, David, that's rubbish, get rid of it. And I'll be like, no, because this reminds me of that time when I was eating a bag of crisps. Like,
right. And because you were really in that moment, sensory wise, monotropically. I know we're gonna have to talk about what monotropism is, but and it was such a good moment that you do want to capture it somehow, and that crisp bag captures it. Yeah, no, I get that. Is that autistic? I mean, maybe. So taste too, because we haven't talked about taste, but yeah, the crisps.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a pretty good, yeah. There are people who have the sensory, the super taste buds too, which that's pretty interesting. You taste all kinds of flavors that I can't taste.
You see, for me, I really enjoy same foods, but I also really enjoy trying new foods to see if they will become my safe foods.
Yes.
So I kind of have both sides. So I'm always willing to try something new, but I do have a lot of the same foods that I will constantly come back to for security because I know what they're going to taste like. I know what the texture's like. You know, it's just safe. Like,
and that has changed. Yeah, I used to be very adventurous. And back when the term foodie was a thing, I was a foodie. But, you know, in the past several years, I have kind of gone the other way where I like my same foods. I don't know why. Yeah, it just is. And I think, you know, we haven't talked a lot about interoception and proprioception.
No, we haven't.
I'm thinking with, I don't know. I don't like standing still for a long time. I don't know if that's anything that unusual. So proprioception. Oh, so this is an interesting thing that I learned about myself. So when you talk about the feeling of pressure on your body, I, at certain times in my life, have lost a lot of weight. And I will get down to a weight where then it's almost like a panic. I don't feel like I take up enough space in the world, that I am going to blow away or something, that I'm too fragile. And so it's that, you know, once I realized that was a huge kind of moment, you know, that I have to have a certain amount of pressure on my body or weights on my body to feel comfortable and safe.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. I think I've probably experienced that a bit myself in the past. But one of the problems I have is if I am not moving constantly, it's like my proprioception and vestibular senses just switch off. Mm-hmm. And so if I stand perfectly still, I will fall over. I'll just fall over. Like I cannot, like I lose track of where my arms and legs are. I lose track of what way is up and down. I have to be moving constantly in order to stay balanced. I'm like a bicycle, really.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And if I sit still for longer than I don't even, you know, like a pretty short amount of time, I will fall asleep. I would just shut down and fall asleep. Yeah. So that made school and that wasn't, my foot was always moving, or some part of my body was always moving, so I wouldn't fall asleep. And I wouldn't be able to, I don't know if maybe that's part of the ADHD thing. I don't know. But you have to stay stimulated somehow.
Yeah.
And interoception, I think I'm mostly hyper interoceptive, whatever. It's like I can feel I can feel my digestive system moving sometimes, like Amanda's saying, are you a unicycle?
Yeah. Yes, I'm a human unicycle. That's a really good way of explaining it.
Right.
I'm going to put that in my bio. I'm going to put that in my bio on my website, David the Human Unicycle.
Yes. Oh gosh, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so people who are able to really feel fluids and such moving around.
I'm definitely hypo on the interoception because, internal pains or things that people would say would be very painful, I don't respond to them much. And I can be quite alexithymic. I don't always know how I'm feeling. I'm very good at feeling what other people are feeling. So I have to co-regulate a lot in order to feel emotionally regulated. So I don't know what I'm feeling most of the time, but what I do know is if everyone around me is dysregulated, I will be dysregulated.
Yeah. And that can be difficult if you didn't know that about yourself and you walk into a room and you're just feeling this, you don't know why you're feeling that way, how just confusing that would be. And I wonder, it's going back to, is alexithymia about, are you born with it, or is it something that's kind of trained into you? Do you think you were always like that? Or for me, a lot of it is, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, I don't know why that's bothering you. That doesn't bother anybody else. That, having that dismissed so many times.
I can't really say whether I was born that way or not, but my earliest memories, I can remember not really being able to articulate exactly how I felt. Like I could approximate it, but I couldn't really explain. I couldn't really explain, accurately. And I certainly, I was around dysregulation a lot, so I wonder if perhaps my interoception became less sensitive by necessity because I was experiencing a lot of sort of intense things during my childhood. So perhaps that's why. But then again, like you said, I don't think anyone really knows whether we're born alexithymic or whether it's something we develop. I know there are people who make some very compelling cases for the effect of trauma on our interoceptive accuracy. But I don't think there's ever been a definitive answer. And certainly from my own experience, I can't remember being a baby, obviously. And my earliest memories, my interoception was all over the place, really. So,
see, so my earliest memory, I have to guess I was around 2 because I was in a crib and there was a mosquito in the room and I could hear the mosquito. So my autistic hearing was sensitive enough for the sound of a mosquito. I already knew the mosquitoes, I had an allergic reaction to them. I would get huge welts. I knew to be afraid of them and I could hear them and I was screaming like, ah, there's a mosquito. And so just being so dismissed, it was annoying to my mom or sister, whoever, who would come in and have to hunt down the mosquito, that, not to I guess, yeah, to let it bother me so much, but it was still there. I don't know. Yeah. The mosquito still, I can't stand this thing. I cannot allow a mosquito to be in the room with me. I will not be able to sleep. I have to hunt it down, even if it takes me 2 hours. So we've talked a lot about these autistic hearing and different things. But so what is monotropism? This is so simplified, but monotropism, I'm trying to move this now. Sorry. I'm trying to describe it, and Dr. Wynn Lawson is a good resource for this, but maybe a tendency toward interest in one thing at a time. So you've got this, I've heard of it, interest tunnel, focusing on your dedicated interests or passions or hobbies, deep diving into a subject, seeing patterns, the propensity to do a lot of problem solving, enjoying quality over quantity. All of the ways to describe having one-track mind. I don't know, how would you describe monotropism, do you think?
I guess I would describe it as, at its simplest form, it's monotropic minds tend towards hyperfocus. So we tend towards singular, detailed attention tunnels rather than splitting our attentional resources across multiple things at once. We tend to prefer that one single thing that we hyper-focus on, and we build up that inertia where we're focused on it so intensely, and that's why it's so difficult for us to transition to something else, because we are so deeply focused. We have to shift all of our attention. It's like trying to turn off of a highway at 120 miles an hour.
Right, and it's like a physical pain, a physical reaction to having to shift your focus. It's not just an annoyance, but for me, when I am hyper-focused on something and someone comes in and says, hey, it's time for dinner, I mean, it's a physical pain. And then I can't go back to, once my focus is shifted, oh, now it's dinner time, I've lost it. I can't go back to where it was. Yeah.
I am immediately dysregulated if someone breaks my hyperfocus. Like, if anything is going to cause me to be in a bad mood or have a meltdown or shut down, it is someone forcibly changing me out of that hyperfocus.
Right. And, I used to feel a lot of shame around that because I was supposed to be able to unfocus from what I was doing and go do something else. At work, I was supposed to be able to pay attention to what my boss was saying when he would come in and interrupt my work. And I was supposed to be able to focus on what I was saying pleasantly, not be dysregulated and upset about it, right? So knowing that I'm monotropic, but now I'm not ashamed. There's no reason for shame. It's just what it is, because I'm autistic. I'm going to have that reaction.
Absolutely. And there's definitely something to be said there about how often people expect us to just be okay with not doing what comes naturally to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've discovered too that if it happens over and over again, before I knew about monotropism and felt that shame every time I was interrupted and struggled with transition, that buildup of shame cause a lot of problems, so even physically causing problems. So Amanda, you want to read what Amanda?
Yeah, Amanda Sutton says it's like when train tracks have to be moved to allow a train to go in a different direction. I think that's a pretty good explanation, actually, because they can't just turn. Something has to be done with the track to turn them. And if you try and take a train off its track when it's not supposed to or not ready to, it's disastrous.
Yeah, exactly. Disastrous. So don't do it. And so I'm moving on to different ideas from other autistic people. This was from My Autistic Soul. And I'm looking at details that autistic people may need to know who, what, when, where, why, and how. Details are important. We see details before the big picture. We share the details. Most people leave out the details, but we don't find them unnecessary. They have meaning. We ask for details. When someone is telling an autistic something, they may ask a lot of questions because autistics like to have the full picture. We need to know everything we can about anything we're told about or think about. The fine grain aspects of life are irresistible. I do agree with that. I think it's the little details that are stimmy.
Yeah.
And then when details are absent, it may cause stress. Probably does feel stress. We may feel uncomfortable, incomplete, ungrounded, or wary. Yeah. I'm going to move a little bit faster through. So just, autistic people take in, process, act on sensory information differently, like you mentioned before, and they are largely monotropic. And I think I've heard this before too. If someone is AuDHD, that is autistic, autistic and experience ADHD, then it is possible that they are monotropic in shorter bursts, doing a lot of different activities in succession, not at the same time.
I like to describe the monotropism that we see in ADHD as, I'm AuDHD, I'm autistic and ADHD, and I can hyperfocus very well. But what I often can't do is choose what I hyperfocus on.
Oh.
And things can suddenly shift my hyperfocus onto a different topic. But it does it in such a way that it's not quite as traumatic as someone pulling me out of it. It's like there's logical connections, like associative thinking that reorients me onto a different path, but I don't get to choose if I take that different path.
That makes sense, right? One of the main things that's important is autistic traits are normal for autistic people. So, we were talking about hyper according to a norm. Well, all of these things that we're talking about are normal for autistic people. I liked this thing. I don't know how well you can see it, but Dr. Chloe Farhar in one of the Aucademy bite-sized videos was talking about the spectrum being more like a rainbow sausage instead of, when we think about the fixed line, and when you go through your assessment, you're like stuck on this line from low functioning to high functioning, all these cringy terms, when really it just changes over time. You take all your sensory stuff and just all of that, and it just changes day to day, hour to hour, over the years.
I like to mention that it's dynamic. Like like you just said, it changes day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. You can't say this is how the autistic person will be forever, because humans change.
Right. Things happen to you. You experience different things. You learn more. You're in different environments. Environments change. All of that affects it. Absolutely. And the more you know about yourself, the more you can hopefully advocate for yourself, or be more assertive, or find ways to be in more pleasant situations. I don't know. So that's what autistic culture, positive autistic culture, I think is about, that we can have a better understanding of what we like And we go through all of our senses to find that. Things that you don't like over time. And the co-occurring conditions. So it's important to know if you experience ADHD or have visual snow syndrome or whatever it is, that if some of these things, you can see medical professionals about and get help for that, support for that. There's no one autistic community. Yeah. And we lead with strengths and positivity and assume competence. Like the kid who's staring up at the sky, looking at what they see, not to go to, what's wrong with this kid? But assume that something cool is going on there first.
I like to think of the autistic community and autistic culture. There's this idea that comes from these philosophers called Deleuze and Guattari, and they talk about rhizomes, which are like these interconnected networks that have no entry or exit point, and they're both interdependent but without being dependent on each other for their existence. And I think of the autistic community kind of like a rhizome. So there's a network of all these different little groups of communities that there's no like entry point, like you join this community first. Like we all enter that autistic rhizome at different places and have different experiences, and therefore almost like different dialects in the way we relate to being autistic. But yeah, it's like this really I always see the autistic community as this really sort of rhizomatic network of communities.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. I know we talked about communication a little bit too, and got to bring in double empathy from Davey and Milton. That I think this was a good way to think about it. That people in a culture communicate roughly the same way with each other, and someone outside of that culture just truly cannot understand that group because they're not a part of their communication style, using their actual nuance. But autistic people tend to communicate in a way, and we've heard this before, blunt, to the point, direct, monotropically, clear. We mean what we say what we mean. So if you ever had any questions about what double empathy is, it's based on that study. And we talked about autistic empathy. This was from Autball. And some people say that autistic people try to make it all about them. You're just trying to make it all about you. Another way to look at it is, well, I've been going through something similar, so maybe sharing my story will help. Or, oh man, now I have big feelings too. I just feel this so much. Or, oh, I know how to fix that. I have that same problem. Maybe helping them solve their problem will make them feel better. Or, my favorite thing always calms me down, so maybe it'll help them too. I'll ask them to do it with me. So, different way of looking at that. And then also, autistic people can be misinterpreted as being cold and uncaring. But maybe another way to look at that would be, I'm not sure how to help, so I'll leave it to that person over there who looks like they do know how to help. Or if I get involved, I'm going to become overwhelmed myself, and that will take attention away from them. So it's best if I just stay out of that. Or when I'm upset or overwhelmed, I prefer to be left alone. So I bet they feel the same way. Or if I'm not sure how to help, and I usually make it worse when I try, but I get it wrong, it might just be better for everyone if I just don't do anything. So
Yeah.
different way of looking at it, right?
The cold and uncaring one is one that I get misinterpreted a lot, because I will either, weigh in with something that I think will be helpful, or if I can't be helpful, I will steer clear because I don't want to take away or misguide someone, so people often think that I just don't care, but actually I really, really care. I just know there's nothing I can do to help.
Mm-hmm. And I get they seem like they know, someone else knows more about this than I do, so I'm going to let them talk. Yeah. Yeah. And this is from Nanny Ott. So these are some of my favorite people. When you get autistics together, there is the joyful sharing of knowledge in depth. And when someone is talking, the main goal isn't to contribute. The goal is to learn a lot of the time. Two autistics who have a deep interest in the same topic will both learn, both educate, and both derive deep joy from the interaction. And that's really what I was hoping for today, David, because I know we're both interested in autistic experience. And so I was hoping that this would be more of a format where we're both learning and both sharing and we're all interacting. And yeah. Autistics can end up interrupting, not because they want to take over the conversation, but because the cool fact they heard has triggered the memory of another cool fact that's related, and they want to share before the fact is forgotten and the shared joy is lost.
It's almost, I think people call it penguin pebbling, don't they? Look at this cool thing I found. I want to give it to you.
Yes. Oh, that's another one of that's coming up right here. This is penguin pebbling. Yeah, sharing an interest or thing with someone is a sign of affection too. I found this cool rock and I'm going to give it to you because it's so cool. Info dumping, right? Sharing the precious nuggets of knowledge we have discovered in the hopes that they will bring others as much joy as they have for us. And parallel play, body doubling. I think there's some people getting together through Aucademy once a week to do some body doubling, where you're just doing something next to someone else. You can interact if you want to, or you don't have to, but it's just being with other people.
Body doubling is a big one for me, that parallel play, because lots of people, not lots of people, but there have been people in my life who think I'm just ignoring them. They don't understand that for me, just being parallel with someone, just being in the presence of another person, is it's actually quite an intimate experience for me. It's something that I do with people I trust. Yeah. There's actually more to be said for how much I trust you if I am willing to sit in silence with you and do a separate thing alongside you, than if I feel the need to be talking constantly.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I don't understand this one as much. The deep pressure, please crush my soul back into my body feeling. I don't know.
For me, that's a grounding thing for me. If I can feel my head running away with me, deep pressure, like someone giving me a really, really tight hug, it kind of brings me back down to earth.
Okay. What I kind of came up with too was so I can experience great joy, but I can also have really low, just like I'm up here, I can experience really, really low points. And I think just someone sitting with me during those low points, just accepting that that's what it is. And that to me is like putting my soul back into my body kind of thing.
Yeah, and Minkwell's on YouTube says, I love parallel play. It's such a rarity, though. That's what I really love, connecting with autistic people in a way that we can build towards that kind of parallel play, because there is something so special about it, I think, for autistic people, because I don't really know any other group of people that comfortably do that being parallel. I can't, off the top of my head, think of any other group of people other than autistic people that comfortably can just be present with another person.
And we need to normalize it. There's nothing wrong with just being with each other. Yeah.
It really annoys me when people are like, oh, look at that child, they're not playing with their peers. I'm like, they're being parallel, they're enjoying themselves. Like, that's fine. Just let them do it. Like,
yes. Okay. So, right. Like, I've recently discovered I really enjoy sorting Legos. That's how I play with Legos. I sort them. I have always enjoyed just like sorting by color and shape and such. So I will go into the Lego room. My kids are playing with the Lego like they're supposed to, right? You know, like building things with them. And I am going through all the stuff that they don't want anymore, and I'm sorting them. And they love that because then they can find the things that they were looking for. But it's fine. It's a fine way for me to play.
yeah.
Support swapping, sharing spoons. That's kind of a big one here too. If I'm cuddled up in my chair under my blankets and stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm out of water, like if someone's walking by and they see that and they get me some water, that is just so amazing. So I don't have the spoons to get up and go get some water, but if someone else has the spoons for that and can do it, that means so much. And here's some of those resources. As we're getting to the end of this, all the Aucademy videos on YouTube. Just start.
And Amanda Hutton says sorting is creating order out of chaos.
That, that's probably what I'll be doing after this, because this has been an exciting hour for me. I'm probably going to go sort something. I'm definitely going to go sort something. And I really liked the Inside of Autism course with Kieran Rose. He finally wrote that book. It's a really good, there's a lot of information there. I like Dr. Wynn Lawson, Dr. Naomi Fisher, if you've got kids or if you are supporting kids, self-directed learning, but also supporting kids in school too. Damian Milton for the double empathy. Christy Forbes, her In Tune Pathways. Neuroclastic has a ton of good articles and things. Nanny Ott writes quite a bit. Granted, Tucci, if you need an occupational therapist, he has some good stuff. There's David Gray Hammond.
I've heard of him. I hear he's a very handsome chap.
He's got a lot of really good stuff. And apparently there's a lot of stuff that I need to go hunt down on too. Autisticality for visual resources and memes especially.
Autisticality is our favorite potato.
Yes, exactly. That's an easy answer to the question of my favorite potato. Altball also has some really, I think, spot on memes. NeuroWild, it's a really nice artistry. PDA Society, ICANN Network. If you're looking for intersectionality with Black and LGBTQ+, Fidget and Fries, Tiffany Hammond. Neurodivergent Rebel is also really good for that. Unconditionallearning.org is a new one that I have come across. Dr. Ross Green, especially if you're working with kids. And All Brains Belong for some of those co-occurring condition questions. Those are my favorite resources. Because this was a big overview. I don't know.
That was those are some really good resources, if I do say so myself. But yeah, but that was a really good presentation, and it was really good to go through that step by step of things in the autistic experience, because I think so often we in a very autistic way, we focus in on these really niche parts of the autistic experience. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and take that bird's eye view of, you know, what's going on here, because, you know, that there are these various theories that go around, and, you know, some are really good, some not everyone relates to, and then you've got some that people just stay away from. But I think it's really good to be able to look at, there's like it's simple and complex at the same time, because there's simple ways of explaining autistic experience, but there is a complexity to the nature of it as well. And I've really enjoyed doing this live with you this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
And is there anything else you wanted to add?
No. That kept us on track. Yay.
Yeah, it did. So we've already covered what your favorite potato is. We know it's Ben, autisticality. So what is your current favorite or new stim?
Well, I already mentioned that too, kind of sorting Lego. I'm trying to think. Oh, well, and deep diving into cultish things. If you ever have yeah.
I will have to send you the links to my cult episode from last night.
Yes, that is just so stimmy, like intellectually stimmy stuff there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's been the beard stroking tonight. I've been sat here just doing this constantly.
That's true. No, that and your mouth. A lot of people's mouths is just very, very sensitive, and so yeah. Touching your upper lip.
Well, thank you so much for coming along tonight, Kat. It's been fantastic, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think the people in the comments have also really enjoyed it. I have no idea what the next live will be, and unless someone puts it in the chat, I can't say. So we will be back. Oh, it's a surprise. It's a surprise. Ben says that the next episode is a surprise. So tune in next month on the first Wednesday of October for a surprise episode with a surprise guest, and at this point, probably a surprise host. So, yeah, thank you everyone for coming along and joined in, and it's been really good, and we'll catch you on the next one. So, goodbye.
Bye.